Hello, I'm Tanya Petridou, Head of Information Services at Fundsquare, where we place technology at the service of the financial industry, supporting regulatory and information services data dissemination for over 20 years. We have created a series of mini videos together with Ghislain Perisse, Head of Insurance Solutions at Fidelity and Chair of the FinDatEx working group on the European ESG template, to address the concerns and feedback we have received from our clients, the asset managers, following the implementation of the EET on the 1st of June. Hello, I'm Tanya Petridou, Head of Information Services at Fundsquare, and I'm here with Ghislain Perisse, Head of Insurance Solutions at Fidelity and Chair of the FinDatEx working group on the EET, which is the European ESG template. Welcome, Ghislain.
Thank you, Tanya.
So the EET is live since the 1st of June, and we have already started gathering feedback from asset managers around the EET. Obviously, this is the biggest template we have until now. They have expressed concerns about from where to collect the data, how to calculate the information, which version to use. They are asking us how they are going to report it and disseminate it. Here at Fundsquare, we build our solutions to support the asset managers, our clients, around the regulatory requirements on the reporting side and on the information services dissemination. And for this reason, we have also built the EET hub that could enable the asset managers fetch additional EETs for their funds of funds. Considering that the EMT version 4 is also coming in August, we have received some feedback around basically their ability to comply with both, and also related to the data accuracy. So there are serious concerns about the data itself. What will happen if an asset manager populates a field with a value X that in, let's say, 3 months later, 1 year later, they revise significantly? Will there be any direct or indirect impact on the data quality?
Yeah. Alors, first of all, about the sequencing of the templates. EMT was designed for MiFID to address the question of the suitability of a product to a specific client preferences in terms of risk, capital preservation, and so on and so on. So the version 4, which is coming in force for EMT the 1st of August, will be reduced in terms of ESG data. We keep only one field. Why? First of all, MiFID and the EMT is creating a liability in the value chain between the end client, the distributor, and the asset manager. If an end client is not happy, may consider that the product does not deliver what the EMT has provided through all the information chain, it could attack the bank, and the bank could attack the asset manager based on the EMT. So we decided that regarding ESG, first of all, we needed all this quantitative information to be outside of this liability framework because, and you're right, all the quality of the data in ESG is a topic in itself. So that's why all these data are in the EET version 1. So in terms of sequencing, from beginning of June, asset managers start delivering EET to distributor and insurers. And from 1st of August, version 4 of EMT is very important. All people must stop providing any other information. It's more simple. So in practice, it mightn't be that difficult to do it, but I may say that banks are going to look all the data, not to take into account the data at the end of the file. So it's very important to ensure this kind of sequencing. Regarding the quality, MiFID and IDD suitability test is about asking end client, alors, let's do it the regulatory wording, if they want to have a minimum exposure to sustainable investment, taxonomy, and if they want the product to consider principal adverse indicator. Let's translate that in end client. In practice is, do you want to have some exposure to renewable product? Do you want to avoid endanaging the nature and the society? And do you want your investment having a positive societal impact that the client will understand? If it tick one to any of these aspects, or several of these aspects, but at the end, today, insurer distributor will start very prudently and they will take only one, it will get proposed products that at least tick one of the box. All the insurer and distributor are really conscious that today the regulation does not define properly neither sustainable investment nor taxonomy. Because the definition for the taxonomy, the 6 sub-items, such that climate mitigation, client transition, and so on, are not very well defined because they are linked to NACE code. The NACE code has a sectorial definition done by the European statistical organism, which is not really mapped with all the indexes that the financial industry is using. So it's very difficult to do this calibration. First reason why it's difficult. Second reason, for the first time in the regulatory history, we have a kind of inverse calendar. Insurer and distributor need to ask question to client, do you want minimum? But asset managers are due to provide this information only in January next year. And corporates that behind must give this information will require to provide this information in 2 to 3 years. So we have a kind of inverse calendar, making very difficult for all the chain to question. So that's why there is, from the distributor and insurance perspective, I will say what I can see is they will not be, for them it will be normal really to see taxonomy level at 0%, to see a small exposure, 5, 10, 20% to sustainable investment. Today, everybody will be very comfortable to start with a low basis. I think regulators as well are very sensitive to that. A few weeks ago, the EIOPA, the regulator of the insurer, mentioned as well that the data that are to be used have to come only for corporate. They don't want to see any data coming from data provider. They want really that the data that are used are really the data that corporate could have given to a data provider, but not created or estimated data, because the idea behind to that is what? Is when the end client know that he has only 0.5% of taxonomy, he can say, oh, I want to invest in a product with 1% taxonomy. So the flow of money will go to the company that are aligned with taxonomy. So he will get all the financial industry in Europe, thanks to the end client and this reporting, engaging the money towards the part of the industry that are going in the direction of reduction of carbon. So that's why the quality of data is an important point. But at this stage, I will suggest to the industry to start with very careful numbers, because we are in a prudential regulation. It's better to start lower and to move up, to increase this figure with the time, with the quality of data will be improving.
Will the regulator look at the data as such? Will there be any cross-check, any audit for them to be able to check the consistency, the accuracy of the information provided by the manufacturer?
Alors, there are different levels of logic, but I think the regulator who drove the regulation initially, the EIOPA, the regulator of the insurer, he was the main driver, because non-life insurers do manage catastrophic risks for a long time. Everybody has a house, and all these catastrophes are insured by regulators, so they know climate risk, so they know ESG for a long time. And they are used to numbers. Okay. Because when they look at the balance sheet of an insurer, they get through the TPT, all the inventory, so the QRT, so they are used to numbers. But for them, what I see, there are different levels. And in the logic, there are always the three pillars in the logic of insurer. First of all, they will look at my view, at the governance, the audit trail. How do you build this data? So the most important will be to be able to explain how you get this data and why. Because that's the logic. You know, all the value chain need to understand the data, being educated with the data, and see how this data is going to be brought to the end client, how the end client is going to react. Let's imagine that I'm a distributor and I want to have a minimum 20% taxonomy. It's not possible. On billions and billions, it's not possible because in Europe, the European Commission itself estimates that only 1 to 5% of activity or corporate is taxonomy aligned. So we need to have globally an education.
I understand. What would happen if an asset manager, a bank, decides that they will not report anything in the EET? They will not produce any EET. I mean, I will take the last example we had with the MiFID. EMT version 3.1 came into force, and then we still have asset managers deciding not to use it for whatever reason, and they still use the EMT version 3. Will there be any direct or indirect consequences if an asset manager decides to provide the MiFID data without any EET accompanying them?
Alors, from a governance perspective, in the working group of FinDatEx, the insurers and distributor mentioned clearly no EET, no distribution. And not only no distribution, disinvesting from the fund what they don't get EET. That was a clear message that it's better to have an EET with low level of data, but there is something that proves that the asset manager is doing something where the insurer distributor can already start doing something. At least you will not distribute it, but to give the time to the asset manager to fulfill it. And there will be no disinvestment. But I think really that in terms of this audit trail I was just mentioning, no EET means no more business.
This is very important to stress, and it will give clarity to the questions we have received from asset managers saying, well, I'm not ready, I don't think I will be able to provide you with the EET. So this is something very important for the banks, the manufacturers to note. The impact, the potential impact it may have to their business. Thank you very much. And what about the insurers and the distributors' concerns? You coming from the insurer side, have there been any concerns being brought to you?
Alors, that's a good question because there is a difference between IDD and MiFID. There are several differences. First of all, MiFID is at the fund level. IDD is at the insurance wrapper level. Inside insurance wrapper, we have a MOP, multi-option products. We mean that we have several options. Each option being either a fund, but also either a structured product, either a stocks directly, either a balance sheet product, prima ramo, euro contract, and so on. So it means that the questions are the same, but they are asked at different level. So that's the first point. Secondly, the EIOPA mentioned as well, when you consider the DNSH part, insurers need to take into account the principal adverse impact really seriously. Whereas the bank are not requested to do at that exactly. That's why we can see in some markets like France or Germany where we have a specific German MiFID approach, bank, where there is a bit more freedom. The EIOPA does not give any freedom. The EIOPA say, okay, if you want to consider negative aspect, you need to look at the principal adverse indicators because they are protecting the insurer while doing that because they say these factors are very well defined. If tomorrow there is a problem with the end client, that's regulatory defined. There are also a few other differences. Insurers are required for SFDR to show to the end client the pre-contractual of the fund, which is not required on the banking side, and so on. So that's the first difference between insurer and distributor. Another difference is about the structure of the market. For example, in Luxembourg, there is a notion of internal fund, or the fact that a specific mandate is created by a bank, a portfolio manager, then wrapped into an insurance. Mm-hmm. And there is always a feeling that the wrapper come after. From a regulatory perspective, under IDD, that's clear that's not. The insurer need to ask question to the broker, the portfolio manager, who is going to discuss with the end client to ensure the same question across all the wrappers. Of course, on top of that, portfolio manager, distributor, broker could add other questions. But we need really to think that IDD in terms of ESG is in certain way above MiFID here, because the regulator of the insurer is going to check the insurer are doing that. Mm-hmm. So that's an example. Another example of topic, I see several insurers with whom I'm working across Europe asking me to work with them, for example, to do an EET on their balance sheet. Because they need to do an EET on their balance sheet, because when they go to a MOP, an insurance wrapper, they need to have the EET of all the fund and of the balance sheet to be able to aggregate that. Okay. They have the same with, they need an EET on a stock, on a bond to do that. So it's creating a lot of questions, all these regulations. And there are some differences where asset manager must be aware that are very important, yes.
This is very insightful. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching this episode of the mini-series Demystifying the EET with Ghislain Perisse, Head of Insurance Solutions at Fidelity and Chair of the FinDatEx Working Group on the European ESG template. For more, stay tuned on our YouTube channel and LinkedIn.